Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings. Adelina, welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Oh, thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me. I run a company called the Geek Whisperer. I'm Adelina Chalmers, as you'll probably see from the links that Ryan will put under this episode. And Geek Whisperer does essentially four key things. We do one-to-ones advisory for CTOs. It could be first-time CTOs, but we've worked with CTOs from 10 people to 100,000 people. We do technical audits, which are essentially, we review the architecture if you need it, as, for example, one CTO is leaving and another one is arriving, or if you're buying a company. We also do engineering reviews. So, for example, if the CTO has left and you have a non-technical board who have no idea what to do next, I have several consultants that can do an engineering review to tell you what's the best way forward and what sort of people you should be hiring. And then the other thing we do is kind of leadership training, but also internal engineering engagement programs, especially if the company has gone from, for example, engineering R&D led to a commercial entity that, needs to produce a product now because investors are not going to invest unless there's a product on the market.
Interesting. So I'm going to challenge something that you've said to me a couple of times now, that you don't understand. You're not the right person for value and doing the value series, because everything you say there is everything that I've done in my personal capacity, but it's driven by value. Because
it was about IT digital value, and that's where I'm going.
Well, yeah, but value is okay. Value for me is value. It's across the board. How you define value, and the reason why we don't say return on investment and we say return on value is because there's not always about just a commercial money thing. Mm-hmm. Your return on value could be a risk mitigation, it could be productivity, it could be organizational structure, it can be anything. That part of the conversation is, what is the value of doing this? Why are we doing this?
I agree with that 100%. I mean, I have to tell you, I don't do all of this alone, by the way.
Of course not.
I lead it, I sell it, but I have, colleagues that do, for example, the architecture. There's no way on earth I would have the skills to do a tech audit. That's not who I am. Also the engineering review, my colleagues can do that better than I can. So again,
of course, yeah.
I have, yeah. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, value is, and this is, I would say, probably one of the key weaknesses of a lot of CTOs that I've worked with. And obviously my view of CTOs might be skewed here because of that. But one of the key weaknesses I've noticed is they don't often think about technology in the context of business outcomes, profit, customer acquisition, customer retention. It's just like, and I'm going, hang on. That's not just everyone else's job. Your entire job in technology is to make sure that happens, because often without your technology, they have nothing. There's no company. It doesn't exist.
Oh, you're 100% right. I have this conversation also often. And I'm the same as you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an expert at everything. I also bring in the right people to do the right things. And it's one of the reasons why I've driven the value execs community, because I wanted people that are those experts, so that if someone comes to me and says, I need this thing, and I go, that's not I can't help you there. I at least can now point them to somebody that I know and go, yeah, Roger's the right guy. That's his thing. Let me introduce you. And I think that's the way you've got to be in this world that we're in, because there's just so much stuff to know. You cannot be an expert at everything. And I think there's an expertise to knowing when you're not an expert, and also knowing how to step back and just join the dots together and say, you know what, we need an expert on legal, crypto, whatever, or we need an expert on HR in wherever. And a technical background will help you, because you're using these tools that don't work very well, and we won't mention any names. But having that little bit of substance to say, I know that this is not actually just an accountant that you need. You need an accountant who understands SAP, or understands SysPro, understands whatever Dynamics is called, their new version of the ERP system, and that's fine too, having that level versus the thing. But your point around struggling with technical people to understand commercial value and outcomes is a very difficult one. I mean, I've had this conversation a few times this week where the argument has been about the technical complexity of doing something versus the business value down the road of doing it right the first time and spending a little bit extra time now where it might feel like we're going to upset a customer. Yeah, well, the customer will be upset. That's fine. We can manage that expectation if we know that when we get to the future thing, we're going to be 10x better and have not the technical debt, which is what we end up with all the time because we avoid the complicated thing up front. And it's just that.
And I think one of the challenges is, which is the reason of my post today on LinkedIn, is that a lot of CTOs don't realize that they need to be telling stories about what this will get us. And I think a lot of them, and I was the same, by the way, I'm not going to lie. I was
we're all there. Yeah.
But one of the problems is that when you work in engineering, I study maths. It's very black and white. It's either 2 or a 4. You're not sure, you don't say, oh, it could be a 3. Well, if it could be a 3, it must be 1, 2 plus 1 or whatever. But you can't, so we like to have precision. We like to have confidence and safety in exact numbers. And the problem is that when you are working towards a vision, there is no exact number. I mean, when Bill Gates set up Microsoft, he didn't say we're going to have 5 billion computers on every desk. He just said there would be a computer on every desk. But he didn't know how many desks there would be. That was just a kind of a vision, right? And it's the same here. Is that a lot of CTOs think, well, I don't know the exact number, and I would be lying if I would say it would be this number. And I'm going, but can you estimate the number? Can you come up with something that is likely to be right, considering the situation, the context, the da 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 da? Oh yeah, but that could be lie. Would be lying then. So, no, you're not lying. So that I find that fascinating, and at all levels. This is not just first-time CTOs, by the way.
Oh no, look, it could be anybody. I mean, I've got someone who's not a CTO who's exactly like that, and there's a bit of the German heritage coming through sometimes, and she's also built satellites and stuff like that. So you have to be very exact. But as you will know, building software is not an exact thing.
No, because
you could change it in a second from one thing to another. You tend to become a lot more fluid, and it takes an adaptation for people to accept that actually timelines will shift because the need has changed. And if you're working, agile doesn't necessarily mean flexibility to the nth degree, but it does mean constant feedback and also being aligned with the business that potentially is also changing. And I was just talking about my product managers this morning, and we were talking about the priorities. And I said, we have to change all those priorities now because we've now decided to do a different thing. We're not changing the core essence of what we do. We're still doing what we do, but the priorities are now that thing you've put in 3 months from now is actually, we need that we need yesterday. And because now the strategy's changed, we need to enable that strategy for the business. And she deals with it very well, so it's not a problem. But I've had people that will fight you tooth and nail because the contract with the customer says this, and we'll say, no, but we can manage expectation with the customer as long as we're transparent and we explain. And we don't have to explain all the dirty laundry. Just explain there's a good value position to why we're doing this.
That's right. The value position. That's the thing. You've just raised several important points, 2 of which I remember just now. One of them was the fact that I think a lot of CTOs in particular struggle with negotiation and with
conflict.
Adaptability. Yeah, because negotiation is a minor source of conflict. And the other one is the fact that when you're in a startup which doesn't have product market fit, every week, every month, every quarter, if you're lucky, things change. And therefore, the priority that was yesterday a priority is no longer a priority. And that kind of constant course shifting and constant need to adapt is exhausting to people. It's exhausting to engineers in particular. And they need a very skilled leader to smooth out that insane ride that engineering is taken on in that kind of scenario. That's something that I've noticed a lot. What do you think?
No, you're right. And I mean, I was sitting in a call yesterday and someone said to me, oh, well, we need to see the roadmap for the next 6 months. And I tried very hard not to laugh, because I was like, you know what, in just in the short time I've been involved with this, if I did a roadmap now, I'd be changing that roadmap literally 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Because as much as we say things are like we're doing this thing and we're going down a route, the roadmap is the little things that you have to deliver all the way along. And those priorities are changing dynamically right now. So I'm waiting as long as I can to not publish something. I've said I'll do it at the end of this month. But even then, it's going to be a high level milestone based plan, because we're at this stage, we're customer driven. We're not driven by a big seed round of a couple million, and we can do customer stuff, but then also do the core stuff we need to do. We still have to deliver on customer stuff. So yeah, and some people don't like that ambiguity of life, and I think we saw it a lot during COVID, when there was no end in sight of all the lockdowns, and people were struggling with this working from home, and they were so used to being in an office, and they had that cohesiveness that they could go lean on somebody and have a cigarette or have a cup of coffee and talk to them and kind of feel it out. Then they were sitting at home by themselves and going, I'm really struggling with this thing, and I'm getting anxiety from it. And I think there's people that adapt that stuff well and people that don't, and you got to help the ones that don't to be better at it, I guess.
And gosh, you've touched on another topic I'd love to unpick, but I'm not sure which of these are kind of areas of priority for your audience.
Go the way you want to go.
Well, you mentioned that, people working alone from home and struggling. I mean, I worked at a company that during lockdown, which was, was illegal for people to go into the office. There were people breaking into the office because they wanted to be away from, and they were penalized for it because they wanted to be away from the screaming wife and kids, or screaming kids, really. And then obviously now the tide is shifted, that the people who want to work remotely have the privilege of extra rooms and whatever, and then they don't want to go back into the office. So and I think this kind of blanket, and you hear mixed messages of leaders know secretly that actually, people don't want to return to the office. And then leaders, expect everyone in the next 3 years to be full-time, 5 days a week back in the office. And I actually want to ask you a question and see what you think of this, because I was discussing this with one of my colleagues. The pattern that I've noticed with regards to leaders who expect people to be in the office, they're usually over 50, 55. They're usually people who worked 20, 30, 40 years in the, before internet was really, able to help you. What do you think? Is that pattern that we were discussing true? What do you think?
So I think there's a few things to it. So one, yes, I think there is a cultural, stereotypical bunch, let's call it cohort of people that are like that, no doubt about it. I've worked with two guys that were sea captains, so they were at sea for 25 years, and we used to have in the beginning, and they're both good friends of mine now, but in the very beginning of getting to know them, they used to freak out with me from working from home. Yeah. And they wanted me to be in the office. And I used to say to them often, like, you got to understand, for me to come to the office is a 2-hour loss of productivity. For me to sit at my desk and do phone calls that I could have done at home. But from their point of view, they're so used to having a crew of 26 people at their beck and call for 6 months at a time. Yep. And that physical, I want, and the one guy would say to me, I just want to be able to look up and talk to you. And I'd say, but you can look up and type a message to me, or you could look up and press the call button and you could see me. It's the same thing. It's but where I think there is, and this is why I've always been a fan of hybrid work. And when we lived in South Africa before we moved here, I worked in an office every day, and I used to drive through a lot of traffic. And in South Africa, you could do phone calls and stuff, so it wasn't a complete waste of your time because you would do stuff on the move. Yeah. But I used to sleep at my desk. I used to sleep under my desk sometimes because the drive home was a waste of productivity time sometimes, or drive to work. And that was a really tough period. But the point I was going to get to is that before we moved to this country, because we live in the UK, obviously, I used to get up at 4 a.m. I used to work till 7 on all the stuff that needed brain work. I used to go to gym 7 to 8. I used to go play golf from 7 till 9, hit 9 holes or sometimes even a little bit more. See some customers like in and around where I needed to be, I'd be home by 3. I'd do some more work or whatever I had to do, but I had complete autonomy on my time and where I spent it, and I was hugely productive, like extremely productive. And then I got to the UK, and I was working for one of the big banks, and we were building all the technology to allow you to work on any device, anytime, anywhere. That was our motto, but we had to be in the office 5 days a week. And I actually said to my boss, like, this is stupid. Like, how do we know this shit works? Like, how do we know that it works from anywhere, like if I go down to the Starbucks down there, how do I know it's going to work? No, there's other people testing that. I'm like, yeah, but that's not like those people testing it are going to do the typical thing that a tester does. They will go down to the coffee shop, they'll open up, they'll connect, they'll press 1, 2 things, and they'll disconnect and say it works. But the real test is that I used to live in Kettering, which was north, an hour and a half, like an hour train ride north. And because we weren't allowed to have laptops, we had to use this VDI infrastructure. You had to connect in to your remote session to do your work because you weren't, there was nothing to carry. So I bought a laptop for myself and whatever. And I said, that's the test. Can I go on a train ride from London to Kettering, because that was my station, and can I work? And I can't work because the connectivity is shit. That's before now. I mean, it's even worse now. It was probably usable then. So to answer your question, I think there are some jobs that you have no choice. You have to be in the office.
Of course, especially a lot of hardware design stuff. I mean, of course. Yeah.
But I think, the key thing for me, and it's always been about this, if you trust your employees to be adults and to behave like adults, then they will give you high productivity. If you mandate things, you get the complete opposite.
Yes.
You need physical interaction, no doubt about it. I'm losing a staff member now because we're a remote team, and she needs an office. She needs to socialize with people, all the rest of it. I said, look, I can't give you that. Like, for me to go and meet you once a week, it's like an hour and a half drive for either one of us. I'm happy to put you in a shared working space, but you're still going to be on your own because you have to get to know everybody. It's not the thing. She needs to go to a bigger company.
Yeah.
So you do need those things. And I think for young people that are starting off in their careers that don't know how to manage themselves, and I'm seeing it with another friend of mine's kid that's running our community, like, he literally needs to be taught how to prioritize his work. He has no idea. He's very good to go and study stuff. He's, very highly rated, a very intelligent guy. But I've seen just in a month, like, how little he understands to how to prioritize tasks and how to, like, just because we talk about it now does not mean it's the most important thing in the room.
Yes. Yeah.
Just that little bit of experience. So these are all things to a thing. So I think having people in the office with that stuff, that's why I think hybrid makes sense. And I've noticed that, like, I go into London once a week, and I go to a friend of mine's house to work a day a week with a whole bunch of other people. That just gets you that little bit of human contact and share some stories and stuff. And this is so I was never completely for like work from home 5 days a week. I always was the opinion that you go to the office for a reason, which is we're going for a workshop, we're going to go do these things. This is a meeting we do in person because we need that stuff. That makes sense to me. But the mandated, be in the office 5 days a week never made sense to me. When I was working for one of the other banks, we literally had a 6-floor building of all the technology, and we'd all sit on the meeting over Skype for Business in the same building. But because you didn't have time between your meetings to actually go meet in person, you'd be in the same building, but you'd be talking to the only time you saw each other was when you walked out the building at the end of the day and gone, we should have just done that meeting in person. Like, but then there's no time to get to the other meeting with the other guys. So I think people need to be adults. That's the crux of it for me.
100%. And this is, I think I think, to be honest, you hit the nail on the head there. And I had this conversation with the CTO this week. They were complaining that their engineers are behaving like 12-year-old children. And I was saying, well, they are behaving like 12-year-old children because everything has been top down. Maybe it's not top down now that you joined, but the previous CTO was top down. And when you treat people like children, they act like children. It's as simple as that, because then it's not their responsibility. It's not, they feel entitled to act like that as well. And, it's a chicken and egg situation. If you don't trust people, you don't trust people. If you don't trust people, you don't trust people. If you don't give people enough kind of autonomy and kind of empowerment to get stuff done.
Well, Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I think there are people that don't want to be empowered. I think there are people that like to be told what to do.
But
And
then that's the sort of people you want.
well, and this is the interesting thing. I saw this on, I think it was Instagram or something, a little short, where the guy said the difference between the military and a business is in the military you have leaders, in the business you have bosses. And what he was saying, which is exactly what you're saying, is in the military, the head person will come and say, here's the problem to his direct reports or her direct reports, and say, how are you going to solve it? Come back to me with a plan. And then all the people that are involved come back with a plan. And these are the experts in the field. What happens in a business often is the boss comes in and says, here's the problem, here's how I want to solve it, go execute the plan. And
yes.
and the people around the room, and I mean, I've seen this with a few customers, they've bought technology and they've literally said to me, well, I didn't want this technology. My boss bought this technology and told me to use it. And then we're sitting with this thing a year later and they haven't adopted it because they never wanted the technology in the first place. And in some cases, it's job security to not use the technology. In some cases, it's, well, it was forced on me. Why would I want to use this?
Yeah. Yeah. And the amount of, do you know what I find amazing is that people often don't even realize that they're being top down. They often seem to think that top down means having a harsh tone. You can be top down and have a very soft tone, but it's still, just the approach. And one of the things I've noticed in a lot of CTOs that I work with has been that, well, I told them this is what we need to do. So why are they upset about it? So, well, you haven't won them over. You never told them why you're doing this. You never tried to explain what is the business problem you're trying to solve by pushing everyone in the office 5 days a week exactly. And that's the thing that I find shocking. It's just like it's almost like they assume that because you mentioned something once, that's it. They will agree with you automatically on everything just because you're the boss. That is the essence of top down.
Yeah.
And I just find that fascinating that just communicating once to people, there's no acknowledgement or awareness that you need to win people over. This is not 200 years ago where people were desperate in doing stuff. It's just not.
Well, I mean, 200 years ago, and I don't know if you've ever read the 48 Laws of Power by, what's his name? Robert Greene. Do yourself a favor. It's a really good book. And he basically explains a law of power but the example is historically based. And when you read the law and you read the power, and you're like, holy cow, I understand now. Now, going back to your example of 200 years ago, a lot of the time those people in the power was because if you didn't do what they told you, you weren't going to eat, or you wouldn't have shelter, or you'd be killed by the army that they had. I mean, Shaka Zulu would kill people if they showed any pain when they're running on thorns. They'd stab them with a spear. So, he had an army because, he ruled by fear, and he got beaten up by every tribe down the coast of Africa. But yeah, that's a separate story. But the point that you're making, which I totally agree with, and this is something that took me a long time to learn, and coming from South Africa, where we're very direct and very blunt.
Which I actually prefer, to be honest. I much prefer than this whole let's be fluffy.
Well, where are you from originally? Because you've also got a bit of a twang to your accent. So
I mean, I was born in Romania, but I don't feel Romanian. I never have.
Yeah.
But to be honest, my Romanian is rubbish. I've never worked there. I have no idea what they're like when they work. But
yeah,
I always felt that you have to be democratic. You know what I mean? But I also like. I mean, I'm on the spectrum, right? So I like to be more direct. I do like. Because I sometimes can't guess what people are thinking. I can't guess what does this mean. I much prefer to just tell me what it is. Rather than.
Well, we're the same, yeah. Yeah. So when you say on the spectrum, is it the autistic spectrum, the Asperger's, the ADHD,
I mean, definitely autistic spectrum. I have lots of traits, women's traits. I think I didn't realize I had it for a long time until my fiance pointed it out with a book written for autistic women. I was like, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
It was like, but because, as a woman, it's different than, it manifests differently than in a man. It was hard to identify. But yeah, sorry, go on.
No, it's fine. I mean, mine has been diagnosed with ADHD, but I definitely think there's other things that I have on that. I'm very same. And what you were saying about, I don't know what other people are thinking. Like my wife and I fight about this all the time. When she's subtle about something,
Yes.
It doesn't mean anything to me. Like, eh. So I say to her things like, if you want me to do something, just talk to me about it.
Tell me.
But then also don't come and tell me like 20 things at the same time, because the minute you go past 3, it's all gone. It's all gone. Forget about the 3 things. It's all gone now. Now I'm my brain has already gone to the other things that's there.
Yeah.
The working memory is now focused on something else, and it's tough. I mean, it is a very tough thing. But what I was going to say is that
in our family, my fiance and I, he says, you are always so subtle, and by that means I'm hyper direct about everything.
Well, yeah. So when I moved here from South Africa, I actually got pulled aside after about my first week and said by somebody and said, "Listen, you've been very harsh in those meetings," and I was like, "Harsh? I thought I was being pretty gentle. Like I hadn't even got to the hard part yet. I said I was laughing when I said that thing.
Yeah.
It's like, no. In this country, you got to be a little bit more like around the bush. You got to talk in like whatever. And you cannot hold people to account. You cannot say because you said you do this that the person's going to do it. You can't say that. It's like, well, then how do you get anything done?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I was really like thing, and then I learned that the trick, which I'm actually coaching somebody now on at the moment. I said to him, what you got to do is you got to actually speak to the people before the meeting. Just phone them for 10 minutes. Have a chat to them, tell them ask them a few questions about what they think about the meeting, and then just tell them what you're going to be, based on what they say, what your angle is going to be, and get their feedback on it. And you got to do, if there's 15 people, and you don't want that obviously people in the meeting, but if there's a few people to talk to, you need to do it to the majority of it, because the meeting is not where the decision is made.
No.
The meeting is already, the meeting is for everyone else to know what's being decided. And there'll be a few people that won't be on board with it, but by then it's too late. And he's really struggling with this concept. And I was like, but why? He said, no, but the whole point of having the meeting with everyone so they can discuss this. Yeah, but the problem is when you put them in that forum, it's an ego thing then, or it's that all the other things come out because now they don't want to show weakness, they don't want to do this, and you just become the whipping boy because you've tabled this thing. Because you haven't given them time to, like if you've got the deck, and I remember a COO that I was working with a long time ago saying, you cannot send me a deck the day before and expect me to read it. Like, you need to give me at least 3 days, 4 days. And even then, I might not read it. So, if you want to have this meeting, you've got to give people 3 or 4 days of thing to talk. Like, you've got to tell them the thing. They might freak out, they might not, whatever it is. But then you need to give them time to digest it and also to talk to their people about this thing, because you might have completely rocked their world or repositioned things, and they need to get like if you leave it to that forum where you're now dumping this new idea on them, you're going to probably get no adoption of it or no buy-in, because they've got to go talk to their key people, because they'll be like, I'm just the boss here or the leader. I don't know how to solve this problem, so I don't know what you're saying is even right or wrong. I need to have John here. John knows this stuff. So now you delay the whole thing because now John has to be involved. John has to be brought up to speed. And then you end up with this trying to move Titanic feeling, and it fizzles out and dies.
Yeah.
Because now everyone's been pulled in unwillingly versus if you just gave them a heads up, this is what I want to do, and they've had time to talk to John. And by the time it gets to that meeting, John's had 10 ideas. He's come in, he's armed his boss with the 10 ideas, or Jill's come in with 20 ideas and whatever it is. So that person comes in going, you know what, actually my team's already bought into this. We're in. Like, I'm going to give you Jack and Jill, or John and Jill, whatever it is. And we're in it. Then the other people in the room are like, yeah, we're also in it because there's momentum. And it completely changes the game.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the thing, is these kind of soft political things that a lot of, I'd say, engineering folk don't necessarily, or science background folk as well, don't necessarily get. And it puts them at a disadvantage because, they just go in. And I guess the other thing is I've noticed is that, so in 2019, just before COVID hit, I interviewed lots of CEOs about their perspective on the CTO and the CTO role and everything. The theme that emerged from all of those meetings was that CEOs felt the CTO was a junior, or near, sometimes not junior, but non-business-like person at the table that they have to have in the C-suite because they are the ones who created the technology. Or they have to have in the C-suite because it's a technical product, it's a platform, it's a SaaS, it's a this, it's a that. And without that, they don't have a product. And that's why they have to involve them. But they don't want to involve them because they don't speak the same language. And that was a huge wake-up call for me because I didn't realize it was so spread. I mean, it was like 90% of the CEOs said that.
And the market hasn't helped that, because if you go look at the average CTO role, it's really a tech lead role that's been given a better title. Also, in a lot of companies, when it came to choosing the person at the senior level to be the technical person or the technology person, they'd pick the most senior, who's been there the longest, technical person, who typically was an infrastructure person or a developer who didn't have any of those skills or knowledges, and they just were, what's the word, not expendable, indispensable.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to lose them, so they gave them more responsibility. But actually what they did is gave the person who didn't want that gig probably the wrong thing, square peg, round hole. And then that scared off all these other people who were not technical, because what your point is, they don't speak the same language. And it kind of scuppers the role. So then you have the CIO role, which even that is sometimes considered to be the bigger role than the CTO role. And if you actually look at technology and how that's become so split, I mean, you have a CISO, for security, you have you have risk, you have obviously digital products. So that typically would be your CTO thing, because you're building technology solutions. But now that's also could be a CPO in the sense of product owner. You can have a digital officer, you can have a data officer, you can have a privacy officer, you can have, you could just have all these C levels, which dilutes the role of technology, but not because technology is not, it's a big thing. It's because technology is embedded in everything. So actually what has to happen in some respect is the other C's, CEO, COO, CFO, whatever, CHRO or people officer, have to become more technology savvy, which means they actually need to develop better relationships with the technology leadership, and vice versa. There has to be that translation. And that's why some CTOs are successful and some fail dismally, because they can cross that bridge over. Yeah. And a good CIO can become a good COO or a good CEO.
Yeah.
But a CEO and a COO doesn't necessarily become a good CIO.
No.
Well,
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, that's it. I don't know what you think. I mean, but that's kind of my rough.
Yeah, I mean, so I was at an engineering conference a few months ago, and I was hearing the CTOs on the panel talking about how the investors and the board need to be educated and educate themselves about engineering. And I just thought, that is never going to happen. I mean, honestly, realistically, there's a lot more of them than there are of you. Therefore, you as the CTO should learn, should be able to teach them why they should care, and teach them how engineering works, and teach them the value that the engineering is bringing to the product, to the company, to this, to that. I hate to say it, but I just can't see how these people will ever learn how engineering works to bridge that gap on behalf of the CTO instead of the CTO doing it themselves. I've not seen a shred of evidence of that yet.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I mean, that one guy that I was speaking about in the captain. I mean, he was a fascinating guy. Look, he didn't have kids, so he had time, but he would go and do all the training courses he could do. So he did a training course on product, he did a training course on being technical, he wrote some code. Like, he went through all the stuff he was learning.
Yeah.
And he is so well equipped to have a conversation with anybody, because he just knows enough to do that translation and to understand. So when we first met and started talking about stuff, he didn't have a clue. And then after about 3 months, he would come to me and say, now I understand what you're trying to tell me. I now get it. And it is as simple as you're saying, but I couldn't understand because I didn't have that background. And it's sometimes it's a spending enough time with somebody, taking them on a journey, which can be difficult depending on how much time either party has. But also it's about a mutual learn each other's business or point of view, and then have that discussion. And that's also.
I feel free to challenge this, but realistically, I mean, this guy is an outlier. He's exceptional. He's amazing.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Completely.
And he's great, and I wish everybody else was like him. But from my experience, reality says that especially HR people, probably marketing, that they would not be bothered to try and go to a coding course or something like that to understand what it's like to code, or to understand what the engineers are going through. And that's why I think it's so important for the CTO to take on that translation role and be very, very good at it.
Well, it's funny because I actually put a board through 1-day coding course many years ago because they were bitching and moaning about how long it takes to write code to build this piece of software. It's so easy. Why can't you just build this thing? And you get abused a few times, and you said, you know what? Actually, I'll show you how difficult it is. And we played with Logo. Remember old Logo? RT90, FD10, whatever it was. We put them through that kind of thing. And after that, it wasn't like an open admission by everyone, but you could see in the next meeting, it was a little bit less argumentative and a little bit more, okay, so tell us how you're going to achieve this. What is like, it's just a little bit of the penny had dropped to say, actually, this is not as easy as I thought. Because we said, like, this is how we teach a bunch of kids how to code. And we're not kids building code, like we're, building software. And I think you've got to sometimes do that kind of stuff. And I think that's where the personality of the CTO has to be one that's an integrator or a collaborative person and willing to be a little bit, I don't want to use the word outlier again, but a little bit willing to do stuff that is not normal.
Yeah.
To try and bridge those gaps. Because I think it is trying to get a respect at the table, much like you buy the first round of drinks when you're new to the company or something like that for the people so that they know you're prepared to chip in, even if you don't drink.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because obviously I never drink. I always thought, I was thinking that, I'm glad you said it because I was thinking, I never drink. Yeah, I mean,
no, like I don't drink either. And we'll go for dinner with people and they'll be like, what wine should we have? And I'll be like, well, I can pick the wine if you want, but I'm not going to drink it.
I'm not doing, me either. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? How all these kind of things, go. I was seeing an internal article one of my clients sent me, and he was saying something about doing pizza days and ice cream days or something. And I was just thinking, all of that is carbs. I can't have. I can have some of the ice cream, but and I was thinking, they don't think that, they wouldn't even think that excludes anybody. But, if we go into, it's like so many things are based on carbs, alcohol, pizza, all of these kind of very sweet things that honestly, anyway, that's another story for another day.
No, but well, and I mean, my wife and I talked about this yesterday. She was supposed to go to a company thing in Sunbury and to play putt-putt. And she's like, to play putt-putt, mini golf.
Oh, okay.
Mini golf, yeah. So
I didn't know it's called putt-putt as well. Sorry.
So in South Africa we have many names for things that are different.
Oh,
like we call traffic lights robots.
You call them what? Robots.
Robots, yeah. Traffic lights are robots. Elevators are lifts. Yeah, there's a couple of other things. Corn on the cob. We call it that's a mealie.
That's a mealie.
A mealie. We call it a mealie.
Okay.
Yeah. MIELLIE.
Okay.
So we have lots of different names for things. But anyway, so
well, or?
Yes, yeah, we all are.
Okay.
Kids are as well. We're dual nationals, so we have both passports. But so we're just saying that like they were doing this team building thing to go play mini golf, and she said, "But I don't even like golf." And this is the thing. Sometimes is there's as much as there's a need to socialize and to do team building stuff. No matter what you do, you're always going to pick something that someone doesn't want to do. And I think this is where you got to be collaborative and say, you know what, I don't like mini golf, but I'm going to go and join my team and do it. Like I hate temp and bowling, but we had a few good nights of temp and bowling. And I think that's just an open mind or a not a fixed mindset. It's the open mindset you got to have.
Yeah, growth mindset.
Growth mindset. That was what I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. So I mean, we were talking initially about what you did in the sense of CTO coaching and due diligence and
I mean, I don't call it coaching actually, because I've noticed there's a difference between coaching and what I do. And this is actually, so a lot of CTOs come to me when they've already had coaching and they've had enough of it. So the key complaint I get about coaching from my CTO clients is that, and this is why I call it CTO advisory, is that the coach says, so they raise a problem with the coach, and the coach says to them, what do you think you should do? And the CTO goes, well, why am I here? Like, the whole reason of me being here is to figure out what to do. And I would really like you to come up with, from your experience, to say something or, contribute to this rather than ask me the question back I've just asked you. And it was just like, this is one of the key frustrations that people had with coaches they've worked with in the past. And that's why I don't really consider myself a coach. I don't have a coaching qualification. I don't like, so I think there's two things from my view. So I could hold a lecture on this.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Is about helping the person find the answer that's within them, but that they can't find because they can't zoom out or whatever.
Yeah.
Advising is when you help them find the answer that they don't even realize is an answer, but it comes because you put in unknowns they might not have realized or thought about. Because, for example, when I work with a CTO, I also interview their CEO, their CPO, and an engineering manager that works for them. So then I know lots of blind spots that they're not even aware of. So this, you know what I mean? Like, I bring stuff to the table that a coach would never bring because they have no idea. They would never know this information. And that's why I call it advisory rather than coaching. Sorry, I didn't mean to lecture on that, but
no,
it's something I'm quite precious about because it's not, I'm not a coach.
Well, you answered the question that I wanted to ask you is what, because I don't think. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had a few coaches in my life and for different things, so I know there's value in coaching, specifically, and in sport. Where the coaches are usually called coaches, but they're actually not coaches. They're more like what you're saying. They're more advisory.
Exactly.
And
they tell them exactly how to change the kick rather than just, how do you think you could, you can do that kick better? So I don't know. I'm doing the best I can.
Well, yes and no, and I think this is the difference is the marriage of experience with the bringing you along the journey piece to it. So yes, you can. So I mean, I'll use the rugby example at the moment because that's obviously relevant to the World Cup. So we got a guy who's kicking. The coach can do the video analysis of his kicking to see why he's missing.
Yeah.
But he also has to ask the kicker why he thinks he's missing.
Of course.
But then he can also show him what he's seeing in the analysis, and they can both look at the analysis and go, yeah, I can see you're lining up wrong. I can see you're waiting too long to kick. I can see you getting too much movement. Same as golf. There's too much movement. There's too little movement, whatever it is. Yeah. So that's where the coaching thing kind of blurs into the advisory thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of coaches, because they're involved with the team, by default are talking to all the players around that player anyway. So they're already seeing all those blind spots, and then the experience kicks in. And so I like the way you've positioned it as advisory for the same reason that I would be doing it. I'm not a coach either. But like the guys that I do end up coaching, and I use the word coaching as an active thing.
Yeah.
Is more that I'm involved in all the parts of what they're doing. And I'm just saying, look, you're not, like, you've got to change the way you approach this because, and a good example is, I said to this guy, you need to provide a weekly update to your boss. That is for the 4 bullet point update, right? And the 4 bullet point update is literally 4 bullet points.
Yeah.
And
not
with one
reports of 50 pages each.
with one extra thing that says, if I had more resources, I could do this thing. And you've got to remember that when you send this email, and I had a very good boss who taught me this, you've got to remember that the person who's reading this is probably going to read it on their phone.
Yeah.
So we used to send test emails to each other before we sent this email off to the big boss to see how it looked on the phone. Can he read all 4 bullet points on the phone? And then the 5th bullet point, which I had later on, which is, if I had more resources, I could do this thing. Because what I was trying to say to this guy is that when you get to the crunch time for this thing, for a decision to be made or whatever it is, you want them to know for a good period of time just the highlights of what's been going on. So when they are talking to their peers, when they're talking to their boss, whatever it is, they've always got something to say on this thing. So by the time it gets to a budgetary approval thing, they're not going, why must I approve this $1 million thing? I know nothing about this. They're going, you know what, this has been going well, or this has had issues for so long, but they've been trying to get through this for so long. And they keep telling me if they had more money or more resources, I need like a data engineer or a data scientist or whatever it is, they'd be able to solve this problem 5 times quicker. You know what? It's $1 million, but you know, we'll put $1 million down and we'll put 500,000 down just in case this needs some more. Because this is something I think will solve a lot, because they've been educated for a long period of time. It's layered learning, as opposed to, and this guy was literally writing 5-page reports as an update. And I took his 5-page report and I turned it into 4 bullet points. Actually, it was actually 12 bullet points. And I said to him, you've basically written this big thing for like 3 months worth of work. Here are the 4 bullet points for each month that you would have sent.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Nobody likes surprises in the boardroom, in the team meeting, and whatever. Surprises in business are not a good idea. Even if you say the surprise is, I've just won, 1 million units. I just sold 1 million units to this customer. Do we have the capability to deliver 1 million units within that time frame? It's just surprises should never. Surprises are never a good thing in business, I'm saying.
No, and another thing I was taught a long time ago is if someone ever gives you something to do, always add value to it. That value could be distilling information from a lot of information down to the most important thing. So even just that, 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, this thing has happened and needs to be escalated. Not just escalating, not just forwarding the email, but because it's been sent to you and you can add value to it. The value could be, hey boss, this is coming up. This is bubbling. It's been raised to my attention. It's going to become an issue. Here's what we need to do. I need your help to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously there's the follow-up in that. But a lot of people don't do that. Just forward the email on.
Yeah.
And then the boss is going, well, what would you do? Like now you're coding, like, I don't know what to do here. Like, what's the decision I have to make? Like, or the boss is going, I don't understand why I've got this guy or girl. So I need to hand this to somebody I need to find someone to handle this for me, which is a natural thing when you're not in the depth. So you lose your credibility because you just forwarded it on. And people don't think like that. They just think that they've told their boss, I'm fine. I'm going, it's Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock. I'm out of here.
Yeah. Later.
So, yeah. So this has been great chatting with you, Adelina. Do you want people to go to your website, thegeekwhisperer.co.uk, or do you want to meet you on LinkedIn? What's your preference?
Probably the best is to connect with me on LinkedIn because my website needs updating. It's way out of date.
It doesn't look too bad. I was going through it. Looks pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that I need to update it with the stuff that we actually do. If you see, none of the products I've mentioned to you is mentioned on the website. So, clearly.
Yeah, that founders dilemma, huh?
Yeah.
That looks good. Great. Well, as I say, great to chat with you. Super.
Yeah.
All the best, hey. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter @the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.